Hello, 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 and welcome to an impromptu Just Chatting stream. My name is Anil, for those who don't know me, and I'm the community manager for Rusty Quill. How are we all doing this afternoon, evening, wherever your time zone may be? Thank you very much. Yes, penguins, it's pretty cold here at the moment, so I thought, yeah... Penguins. Thank you. So, wow. Stream admin out of the way. So, for anybody who doesn't know, we are Rusty Quill. We are a podcast and production company, putting out 3 shows a week. Rusty Quill Gaming, Pathfinder AP podcast, the Magnus Archives, which is returning this week for its 5th and final season. Stay tuned to our social media for more news about that. Which is a horror anthology show, and Stella Firma, semi-improvised sci-fi comedy. So something for all tastes, we hope. Yes, this stream is, like most things we do, supported by you. And you can support us in a variety of ways. You can directly donate. There is a button on the stream down below if you're on desktop. You can support us by going to Patreon at patreon.com/rustyquill and get access to a bunch of extra goodies and rewards for supporting us there. Bonus this month and months going forward, while the current situation is in effect, 10% of all our monthly Patreon intake will be donated to the World Health Organization COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund. We just think that we should be playing our part in trying to help the global situation where we can. Or you can subscribe to us here on Twitch. Yes, we are now a Twitch affiliate, so you can hit the subscribe button and subscribe to here. You'll get bonuses as things crop up. We are in the process of looking for commissions for emotes, so stay tuned for that. Also, what else? Twitch. Nope, okay, it's gone blank. So, what are we here today to do or talk about? We're trialing out a Just Chatting stream with me, to talk about all the various characters I have played during my, going back to it, 23-year gaming history. Actually, let me... can I just check, is the music too loud for you? Can you hear music? I'm trying out a few things with the stream today. So, I want to kind of like put a little bit of an undertone to it. Nice, very chill. Music is good. Music is softly good. Cool. If it gets too loud or I get too loud, let me know, and we will do something. Yes, you do have to pay to subscribe. There are a variety of tiers. If you have Amazon Prime, you do get 1 free Twitch sub a month, which you can use for us or for any other streamer that you have. You just have to link your Amazon Prime and Twitch accounts to do so. And I should probably catch up on the various activities. So, thank you very much to Imogen Games, who subscribed while we were offline. Thank you very much to NB Dragon for subscribing with Twitch Prime just before we went live. And thank you very much, Zalia Chimera, for gifting a sub to Planets and Magic. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you to do so. If you have bits as well, a Twitch unique currency, then you can spend that on our stream or other streams. We get them at a rate of 1 bit equals 1 cent. So it all adds up, and we'll be calling out subs and bit donations as they come in or as I notice them, depending on how much attention I am paying to the feed. So I have Honey and Lemon. I have a chat feed. Actually, I might see if I can get a better look at chat because I want to be able to talk to you all. And pay better attention to what's going on. Oh, thank you very much. 14 cookies gone for the 69 bits. Nice. And for your Ryu here for the 100 bits. Okay. Hopefully, I have now got this set up so that I can look at things properly. Oh, actually. Okay, maybe not. Just out of curiosity, how is the stream looking? Is it jerky or juddery for anybody? Looks good, little laggy. Bit laggy, looks good. Okay. Tiny bit of jerkiness. Okay, let me close a few things and see. Let's close that. Discord. Seems fine to me. Okay, a bit laggy. Sound is crystal though. Good now. Okay. Hopefully things aren't going to be too bad. If it does, am I dropping frames? Don't think so. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously, as Drugcup says, net strength, because everyone has jumped on the streaming bandwagon, be it for shows, Zoom, or dipping their toes into the streaming waters. So, yeah, if it gets a bit niffy, I'll knock the bitrate down a tad. I'll probably do that. I'll take a break and do that. So. Where to start? As I say, doing this as a bit of a trial, see whether or not you like it. Try and introduce something chill into the into your afternoons. And as I say, this is a bit of a trip down memory lane for me. The idea came to me last week that it might be interesting to look at my gaming history. Oh, hey, April! And just kind of look back over the kind of characters I play. And just chat to you, answer any questions that you might have. Thought you all might be interested in hearing about those sorts of things. Yeah, chill Anil time. Yeah. So, in order to set the scene, we go all the way back to 1997, January 1997, to be precise. And the second term of my A levels. So for the non-UK folk, I was at a school. I mean, 1996. Well, I guess part of the story does start in 1996. Hi, Mini Mantray. Yeah, we're just vibing, just chilling. For non-UK folk, I was at a school from the age of 10 to 18, secondary or tertiary school, however you wish to call it. And the 17-18 bracket known as sixth form. This is where you are doing your A levels. So the 4 subjects that I picked that would basically go on to determine my university career. Everything happens in 96. On RQ streams, we are eternally in 1996. Yep, I like citations. That is probably a hallmark. No, you haven't missed much, Charcoal. I'm just about to start the storytelling. Apologies, Stonebeast. I dare say a lot of folks are going to be feeling quite young at this. So yes. So October, well, actually, let's go back. October 1996, I'm starting sixth form. And during my lunch breaks, or during my breaks, I am a school librarian. So I spend most of my break times working in the school library. Also gives me a place to hang out. As you can tell, I was that kind of kid. But come January 97, I was wondering where all my friends were, the friends I would usually hang out with up to this point. And so one lunchtime, I decided I'll go looking, find out where the folks I usually hung out with were. I found them down in the math centre. At this point I should point out I went to a private school, and yeah, we had a room for maths, which mathematics. I have a slight lisp, so apologies for any misunderstanding on that front. And I heard them talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and this was my first. Such a posh boy, yeah. I'm middle class, but I managed to win a scholarship to this school. So, and this was, I discovered that they were talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and they had got into it thanks to some new kids who had arrived in the year. I, feeling a little bit left out, I said, "Oh, can I play?" And they inducted me into the world of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Edition. With a group that they had only recently started running as well. I think they'd been going for about 2 to 3 months by the time I joined this group, and it was the 3 or 4 folks I would usually hang out with prior to this, plus 3 new guys who had come into it. And I very quickly learnt to like this hobby, so much so that I still have the very first player's handbook that I bought in 1997 for that edition. Some of you in chat will probably may own this as well, or at least a variant thereof. And yes, and well, actually, there is a very good reason why I have this book on my shelf now and why it is not mouldering away in a box at my parents' place, and that's because I am currently playing in an AD&D Second Ed adventure with the Hint Place cruise that has just started. You can see the session 0, I think, over on YouTube. Drudcup, if you would care to drop a link to that, you are more than welcome to. So I said, well, I want to play something relatively easy. I want to play something that would evoke the kind of standard fantasy tropes that I had been reading. And I was very much a sci-fi and fantasy kid. Definitely the last few years. At the time, I had been on a very strong fantasy reading kick. What was I reading at the time? So, key things I would have been reading were... Let me think. What would it have been? Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. Not the Dragonlance books, as you might think, but instead a series called the Deathgate Cycle, which I still think is a very, very good set of books and a very interesting world building. But I never actually read the Dragonlance. I hadn't read the Dragonlance books at that time. I have since read them. But what else would I be reading? Oh, and like obviously things like Michael Moorcock, Diana Wynne Jones, and such. Those were like the basis of my reading, as well as general books on mythology, plus the various textbooks and things that I was reading for my studies. So I said, yeah, let's create me a character that A, fits in with your group, and B, that I would find relatively straightforward to play. So I created a wizard, or they helped me build a wizard, and this was your pretty standard fireball throwing wizard. I was playing an evoker, because in second ed you could specialise your wizard classes from the get-go. There are 8 schools of magic, as some of you may know, and I decided to specialise in destructive spells. Oh no, yeah, I was that guy. I wanted to throw fireballs. I wanted to throw lightning bolts. I was very much interested in playing a magic user. These are my fave. They're not easy. Nope, really wasn't. I habitually play speciality priests. I hadn't learnt about speciality priests at that point. As I say, this was my very first character, very first build, and they basically guided me through it. And we were using the skills and powers options so you could craft a character using points that was different from the base as given in the player's handbook. And so there were a couple of additional books, I think called Skills and Powers and Tome and Magic, that gave additional options for spellcasters. And we took enough I had enough points that I could build a wizard who was comfortable casting spells in armor. So I wasn't a super squishy wizard. I mean, wizards are squishy generally, but I wanted to be able to have a little bit of defense and not just be wearing robes as my sole defensive option to start with. So enter into the Forgotten Realms with a speciality wizard, an evoker by the name of Kale Acheron. He did well. I still have very fond memories of this guy. He stayed an evoker throughout his career, no dual or multi-classing, and this was back in a system which didn't make it easy if you wanted to change character types or add different abilities. So I was a human wizard called Kale Acheron, and I really enjoyed what we were doing. It's pretty safe to say that the party I was in were I think I think it's fairly safe to say that, like, by today's understanding, they would be called power gamers. There was a lot of focus on, like, making your character more powerful, potentially at a bit of a loss to the role playing. That's not to say that we weren't, like, role playing for the story, because the DM we had, although he was new, was very heavy into storytelling and making sure that there was a good narrative. And I think if that hadn't been the case, I wouldn't have carried on playing. So yes, Kael Acheron went through many trials and tribulations in his career, often actually finding himself at odds with the rest of the party. And even though I was playing like an 18 or 20 intelligence wizard, unfortunately I can't tell because I don't have access to his character sheets. This is 27 years ago, so I may be able to find them in a box somewhere at my parents', but yeah, it's probably best that he's lost to the mists of time. But yes, he often found himself at odds with the rest of the party, partly because being a bit of a soft touch. He was a very kind-hearted kind of guy, willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. No more so exemplified when we came across what was this scenario? We were fighting something somewhere in the Dales, and we came across a fellow adventurer who the rest of the party took an almost immediate dislike to. Her name was Ilonwi Tathenwell, and she was as mercenary and as adventurous as the rest of us, or as any party of adventurers when you're 16-year-old guys playing this style of game. Oh, thank you very much, Ex Libris Crow, for the 100 bits. So Kael always extended the hand of friendship to Ilonwi, and Ilonwi was a character we would run into several times during the course of this campaign. Not always as an antagonist. I mean, in the first encounter, she wanted the same item that we had gone into some cave or such to find. But sometimes she came to ask for our help on one particular occasion that I remember. But often the party would cross swords with her, or at least the rest of the party would cross swords with her. Kael was always very, I don't know, chivalrous and gentlemanly are the words that I would have used at the time. I'm not entirely sure that I would be overly fond of using them now, but he was that kind of character, like a very stereotypical kind of guy in that respect. And so our adventures continue. They took us all over Faerun. As I say, we were playing in the Forgotten Realms, 2nd edition. The Forgotten Realms is an amazing setting created by Ed Greenwood. If you're not familiar with it, I would suggest doing a little bit of reading about it. It is the base setting for the current edition of D&D, so 5th Ed is set in the Forgotten Realms now and has been For 4th ed and 5th ed made Forgotten Realms the base setting. Prior to that, it was Greyhawk, a world I've never played in, but anybody who is familiar with the Dragonlance games will be familiar with that setting. It's also where you get Kenda instead of halflings, and where their reputation comes from. Anyway, so whilst Kale was a hyper-intelligent wizard, he had intelligence. I think by the time I retired Kale, he had intelligence 22, which was a pretty big deal in those days. But other adventures he went on, yeah. So Kale took a bunch of ribbing for actions that Anil did, because Anil was not as intelligent as Kale, as the character I was playing, and this was a very salient lesson in playing characters who have stats different from you. So one particular scenario was we were adventuring some kind of underground complex, and we're in a long tunnel that ends and looks out over a cylindrical room, or like a cylindrical chamber, where there is kind of like a plinth in the middle, which is glowing with blue light, and a whole bunch of spirits circling the chamber, surrounding the central pillar and plinth. Now, this is based on this is a scene in a movie. No, Senalisha, this story does not involve a fireball. I will tell you a story which involves a flaming spear in a moment. This scene is apparently based on a film I have not seen. So, given the description of the scenario, I thought that there was kind of like a solid pathway across to the center of the chamber to examine the glowing light in the middle. So I said I walk out to the center of the center of the chamber. I subsequently fell to my death. It was I had misunderstood the DM in his description, and paid the price for doing so. Luckily, my fellow party members were able to get me a resurrection, so Kale came back to life, and with an added point of intelligence. So bonus there. Senalisha, good DM will ask you are you sure? I'm pretty sure that he did. I was pretty sure that I had heard him correctly the first time, so I carried on with my actions. So yeah, that is very much my fault for misunderstanding. Suffice to say, it would be it was an incident I would never live down amongst that group of friends. And looking back, it's like, yeah, of course, I made a bit of a boo-boo, but as I say, I came out of it with a point of intelligence. So, yay! Later on, we would do some... What was it? We would do some work for the city of Waterdeep, and the party got rewarded with a manor. An abandoned manor just outside the city limits. So naturally, we moved in. We cleared out a bit of an undead infestation that was in the manor, and we decided that we would make this our home, our base of operations for for future adventures. When we were clearing out, we discovered that there was a portal in the basement. Said portal being discovered by an Umber Hulk blundering through into our basement. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Umber Hulks, think of a bipedal ant that has the musculature of an elephant and a large pair of mandibles looking to snap your head off. If you go looking online, you'll probably be able to find a picture of an Hulk. Fish not fish. I always want to have a deity give me a house that you could call it a manna from heaven. Oh, groan. Thank you very much, Conan Rowe. Yeah, they are quite disturbing creatures. So we dispatched this Umber Hulk. Planets UMBER space HULK. We dispatched the Umber Hulk and investigated the portal. Going through this portal ended up brought us out on an asteroid. And this is this is back in second ed, so everything has a shared cosmology. And there is a setting called Spelljammer, where you could play fantasy creatures in space, which is basically the gap between worlds, and is home to a variety of unique creatures such as the Gith, which are spacefaring hippos. GIF, sorry, not Gith. The GIF, which are, think of the if you think of the British Navy circa 18th, 19th century, and instead of humans, stick anthropomorphic hippos in uniforms. That's pretty much what the GIF were. Oh, nice Supernova in the Wild. Yeah, Spelljammer is a really good setting. I really liked it. But anyway, so this brought us out onto an asteroid, and we discovered that the asteroid was on a collision course with Faerun. So naturally, we had to, being the heroes that we were, decided that we had to try and stop it. So the asteroid was being propelled, controlled, under the control of a group of mind flayers, illithids, and their Umber Hulk servants. So we basically had to try and stop this group from crashing a giant rock into a planet and thereby dooming most of the life on it. As we were investigating the asteroid, we had to go in. We went into it and we found basically a warren of tunnels, and what we would find are so like a main tunnel, branches coming off it, and off those branches would be side tunnels leading to excavated rooms that were blocked off by a curtain. We proceeded through about 3-4 rooms at this point, and what we would usually find is we would go in, move aside the curtain, there'd be an Umber Hulk or something, some other servant of the Mind Flayers. We would dispatch them, carry on. After about the third room, we decided that we were going to play it a little bit more cautious. So the next like curtained off area, we listened, and we heard the same sorts of sounds that we had encountered previously. So, after discussing this with my fellow party members, we decided that I would cast a Flaming Sphere, a second level spell which conjures up a giant ball of fire that you can roll around and set things alight as it goes. So, we decided we would try and clear the room, or at least get the creatures in there to head in our direction, so that we could, catch them in the bottleneck. Thank you very much for 100 bits from Ex Libris Crow and 69 bits. Nice from Molière Sue. And yeah, we decided that this would be a interesting course of action. And thank you very much for the 69 bits and nice 14 cookies gone. Like a hamster ball of fire. Yes, exactly, Shell Smiles. So, I cast it. I roll the ball into the room, and because you control it telepathically, you don't need to see it. Roll it around for a bit, and then the screams start. And we look into the room and discover that the room was mostly empty. I say mostly because what there was a cage full of halflings. Yeah. A cage full of now incinerated halflings. Yeah. No, I didn't like this either. The rest of the group fell about laughing. Yeah. This reminds me of RQG and the Kobolds. Yeah, surprisingly, I had a bit of flashbacks to my own career at that basis. So, yes, Kale was responsible for the death of, I think, over a dozen defenseless halflings. And that was not something that, sat lightly with me or Kale, as we would find out. Suffice to say, we managed to clear the scenario and avert disaster. And we returned home and carried on adventuring. One of the guys playing in that game, that'd be a conversation with the GM. Now, I would very definitely have that conversation, and we would definitely have that thing. As I say, we were 16, 17-year-old guys. Those kind of safeguarding concepts didn't really exist in the kind of like world we were playing in, or at least the world we had access to. On the next or the subsequent adventure, one of the guys who was playing basically our rogue, we had a bit of an altercation with him. His character insisted on doing something that the rest of the party steadfastly refused to go along with. So it was after a brief bit of PvP, we let his character go, and he created a new one. He decided that he was going to create a halfling from the same village as the group that I had murdered. Oh gosh is correct, and we were on a quite an important mission at the time, but this character spent the entirety of any time that we weren't talking to NPCs or actively in combat, trying to extract a promise from Kale to go back or to go to the village and act as its defender, or basically to serve as its protector for as long as they deemed necessary. Now the main problem is, whilst in theory Kale did not have a problem with atoning for his crime in that manner, he was a pragmatic guy at heart, and his attention was focused on the mission. And this was a dangerous mission. We did not know whether we would survive it. So Kale would not promise to do this because he could not promise that he would be alive, and he did not want to break a promise he did not want to give a promise that he did not know that he would be able to keep. 11 thirds. That's not a great group dynamic. I repeat, we were 16, 17-year-old teenage boys. Yeah. Empathy was not our strongest point. Suffice to say, we eventually worked it out that just so that he would stop needling me, we agreed that Kale would give some kind of provisoed promise to go and defend the village at a future date should they survive this mission. Oh, thank you very much, Miss Sunflower94. That's very kind of you to say. Is it buffering? Sorry. Are folks having trouble watching? Just give you a few moments to let the chat catch up. Maybe just... No? Okay. Okay, maybe just single person, alas. Okay. The point would actually become moot because this was kind of like... For me, there are a bunch of other things that happened, like, in character that should not have happened in character, and it was a very good like, looking back on it now, it was a very good example of how not to behave with a group. And don't get me wrong, we're all mostly still friends. Admittedly, we have gone our separate ways, and I don't see them very often. But there were just a few other incidents after this that made me... yes, IRQ conflict. This is such a classic first teenage D&D group scenario. Yeah, it very much was for me. Things transpired that that basically led to Kale leaving the group in the middle of the night. Basically, Kale wanted out. Like, it was obvious that Kale was at odds with the rest of the party. There were a bunch of other scenarios, again involving, I'm pretty sure, like, the, in inverted commas, the straw that broke the camel's back involved the NPC I talked about earlier, Elonwy Tathenwell. I think if I remember correctly, they treated her badly in a scenario, and Kale did not agree with that. So Kale left the group, and in the fiction, Kale actually went off with Ilonwe. Kale went off with Kale went off to find Ilonwe. They ended up in a relationship, and indeed, they got married. Kale actually found out that his name was actually slightly different. Like his name was Kale in Akieran, and they got married. He and Ilonwe got married and ended up with a child. Pretty much all of this happened off camera. So that is the story in a nutshell. As I say, I wish I could go back and actually find some more of the details about it, of my very first D&D character. Now, the character that replaced Kale, and we're looking at, when would we be? We would be probably early to mid 1998 at this point. This was the time when I had learnt a lot more about the setting of the Forgotten Realms, because I went into the game as a newbie, and then pretty much voraciously devoured as much setting information as I could get, and obviously with a love of mythology, it's pretty natural that I would end up gravitating to the fantasy pantheon. And Forgotten Realms has a very extensive pantheon. It's been cut down for later editions, but there are a number of powers in that setting that I am very fond of. So I ended up buying a lot of source books. I don't know, Charcoal. I have played some slightly dodgier characters as well. I ended up getting a whole bunch of the source books, and particularly the Planescape ones. Planescape being my absolute favourite setting of any D&D setting. I would love to run a game in Planescape again at some point. And so I ended up buying pretty much all the source books regarding regarding the gods. And actually, where are they? I can actually show you some of them. So here we go. This is Faith and Avatars, which is the primary guide to the Faerunian pantheon, and it's what introduced me to the concept of speciality priests. And in that, these are priest classes that get additional powers, basically, over your bog standard cleric. If you were playing Second Ed, you would actually discover when you're playing it, if you wanted to play a druid was a speciality priest of a god, one of the gods of nature. I was playing manager. Yeah, a speciality priest is like a cleric of a god, but extra. So very extra. Those of you who have already seen the session 0 of the new Swords of Slaughterdeep campaign that him plays are running, will see that I am playing a glyph scribe in that game, which is a speciality priest of Denir, and Denir is the Faerunian god of languages, art, literature, communication, scribes, and such. So, and the starting power that a glyph scribe gets is the ability to speak any number, well, a number of languages equal to his intelligence score when you encounter a speaker of that language. Disco Priest of the Nerd God. Yeah, kinda. He's got the ability that if he comes up against anybody who speaks a language that he does not know, within a few moments he will know how to speak that language, or he will at least be able to understand the speaker of that language. Not necessarily be able to read or write the language, but be able to speak it. And you will also get like extra spells, as like the ability to cast extra spells as you go along. Usually this comes at the disadvantage of things like not being able to attack or having more limited weapon capabilities, or having less spell access, because obviously most clerics have the ability to cast spells from almost any of the priest schools, but specialty clerics are often more limited in their spell selection. At low levels, this doesn't actually tend to hinder you, really. Yes, as Fish Nor Fish says, many specialty priests cannot turn undead. Glyph scribes can, luckily, but often, that is one of the powers that they give up in service to their power for being able to be more specialized. Drut has talked about having a specialty priest of Azuth, the god of wizards. Azathan specialty priests are extra cheaty as specialty clerics go, because one of their abilities is that from first level you get access to an entire school of wizard magic for free. You get to pick spells from wizard school without a hindrance. And obviously, most people will pick transmutation magic because by far and away that was the largest school of magic and the most versatile school of magic in second ed. Just as a quick note, I also have demi-human deities and powers and pantheons, which details the various demigods in the Forgotten Realms. And I also managed to pick up at GenCon Europe 2000, which was the last GenCon they actually ran in Europe, a copy of Monster Mythology, which details a whole bunch of gods for things like the goblins, the orcs, the Dwergar, vampires, etc. Anyway, so 6:30. Okay. Wow. Okay. We're an hour in, and I've only got through my first character. Hey. So the character I replaced Kale with was a speciality priest of the elven god of time and longevity, a god by the name of Labeless Ainereth. So I was playing take Kane over. I was playing a specialty priest called a Chronologian, which had a bunch of abilities to do with manipulating time and being knowledgeable about history. This was mainly because in those days spells for divine spells were organized into, similar to schools of magic for wizards, they were organized into spheres, and different spheres, different gods gave you access to different spheres. The main reason I picked Labeless Ainereth, actually, I have the source book to make sure that I don't get this wrong. So yeah, I was playing an elf. I was playing a moon elf, to be particular. Was that I had full access to spells involving numbers, thought, and time, which I was very much interested in playing with. Unfortunately, as I don't have the character sheet and I have been through my old email list, I can't actually remember what the name of this character was. And given that we were running into our A levels at the time, so this is me approaching the age of 18. I didn't end up actually playing him for very long. All I remember is that he was an interesting kind of character, but he didn't really make any waves with the rest of the party, and was basically not their cleric, but functioned as a wizard in effect, if not direct power. And so that basically takes us up to like mid 1998. That campaign kind of petered out a little bit, but not really for want of anything. We just wanted to try a couple of new things before we went to university. I bought Alternity, which was the sci-fi setting that TSR put out towards the end of their lifespan, prior to them getting bought out by Wizards of the Coast. And I tried my hand at GMing a game, which went awfully. I really like the system for Alternity. We didn't get more than 2 sessions into it, and I actually was I was actually looking to run a game based upon a ill-fated cartoon of the late 90s, which I was a big fan of, which a lot of people were a big fan of, but ended only after only like 11 or 12 episodes. Some of you may know a cartoon called Pirates of Darkwater, and I wanted to run an alternative campaign based upon that kind of premise. As I say, unfortunately, we only ran for like 3 sessions before uni basically forced us to curtail that. Yeah, there's a DVD. Oh, I should look into picking that up. I would love to be able to run something again that picked up on those themes. Oh, take care, Duck Pond. Have a good dinner. Dark Water Watch Party. Yeah, if we can arrange something like that, I will have to have a look. So yeah, that basically took us up to, I say, October 1998, and us heading off to university. I'll discuss this as D&D characters at length. Yeah, that is pretty much what we are doing here. And with me heading off to uni, I think this is a good time for me to take a break, refresh my drink, and then we will get into university and post-university years. So yeah, get up, stretch your legs, take a bit of a walk if you can, refresh your drinks, grab a snack, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Totes professional. Welcome back, everyone. I'll get the hang of that. I'll get the hang of that one day. Mike, wherever he is probably continuing to shake his head in despair. Yes, welcome back. Hope you managed to grab refreshments. And welcome to anybody who has joined us since the start of the stream. We're just chatting. We're chilling. We're vibing. We are talking about my role-playing characters. A history of 27 years in role-playing, and looking back at some of the characters that I have played and enjoyed during that year, because I thought that might be of interest to some of you. I hope you've liked the first bit. We've covered basically the first 2 years of my role-playing career in an hour and a bit. But it's here that it is, as I say, technically I started role-playing in 1997. We take a bit of a jump here, because when I went away to uni, I did not roleplay for basically the 4 years that I was at university. Barring little bits and pieces when I was back at home during the summer breaks with my friends, but they were often either reprisals of the previous characters that we had played, or things that just were very much throwaway in that respect. There are, whilst my email archives are relatively extensive, I don't actually have a lot from my early days on the internet. In preparation for this stream, I actually went back and had a look at some of my old email accounts, and the emails stored therein, and I only really go back to about 2004. So anything prior to that is a bit of we are fully relying on my memory, and actually even bits post that, the email record is not entirely helpful. As you can see, I am a bit of an archivist in my email habits as well. Thank you very much, 14 Cookies Gone. Oh wow, and thank you very much for the 420 bits. Thank you ever so much for that. I hope you leave the stream in a blaze of glory. Take care, Cookies. The main reason I didn't roleplay at uni is because during Freshers Week I went along to the Roleplay Society, the Cambridge Role-Playing Society, and I didn't really gel with anybody there. They were very much in. I was coming from a D&D background, so that was all I really knew, and the folks there were very much anti D&D, and just generally, I did not get on. I did not get on with any of the folks that I met that evening. So, as I said, I ended up spending my university years not role-playing very much. This changed, weirdly enough. Well, I say that, but there are actually two things. There's actually one thing in the middle of that slightly changed my my outlook and thing. And that's, some of you may know that during my second year of university, I had a mental breakdown. I've talked on and off, particularly if you've followed my Twitter for a while, then I have talked about it on occasion there. Age 19, I had a mental breakdown, and I ended up degrading my second year. So I had to repeat that. during my year off, which was most of 2000, I actually won a competition. One of the things that I was big into, and that actually filled my my role playing, like the vacancy of role playing as far as hobbies go, was that I was a big fan of the Star Trek customizable card game, and this was a card game done by a company called Decipher, who were at the time the primary company to rival Wizards of the Coast and Magic the Gathering. I won a writing competition that they had been running, looking for freelance writers to talk about their products and such. And my prize for winning this was a trip to GenCon 2000, which, as I said before, is the last GenCon that they actually ran in Europe. So GenCon Europe 2000, which was being held in Den Bosch in the Netherlands. And so they paid for me to go out there and to be part of their demonstration crew. And it was there that, whilst wandering the floor, I came across Wizards of the Coast advertising the newest version of Dungeons and Dragons. So 3rd Ed had just been published, and they were actually giving away copies of the Player's Handbook. So I picked it up I picked it up there, put it in my bag, and I'm pretty sure I read it over the next little while, but we didn't really do anything with it. Hugs for everybody who went through university, who got through university just about with problems or such, because it's very commonplace. My heart goes out to anyone who didn't have the best of times at university. So it wasn't until about when I finished university in 2002, and we all, like the group of friends I'd had at A level, we all came back to London and decided that we wanted to try role playing together again. And so we started. We basically tried out a bunch of games. So I actually made a list prior to this of see how far I could actually remember. So about 2002, 2003, the GM for the previous long-running game decided he would do a Ravenloft. He is a big horror fan. And decided he would do a Ravenloft game. And this is where I created a character called Damon, who actually... there we go, for Ex Libris Crow, who wanted to have a look. Horror is very much this GM's thing, as we will see a little bit later. And so we started off on one of the domains called... I can't remember which dread domain it is, but there's one particular set of domains in Ravenloft, and obviously most people nowadays know Ravenloft from the adventure book Curse of Strahd. Just finished Curse of Strahd a few months ago, and that's set in a domain called Barovia. But Ravenloft as a setting has a load more domains, and it actually works to encompass horror tropes from a lot of world cultures. So there's in the Mists of Dread, there is a realm called Rokushima Taiyu, which covers a lot of Japanese and Chinese horror tropes. The one we were playing in was a domain called Shadowborn Manor, which is a very localized small dread domain with basically the entirety of the domain is this one aristocratic manor house, and the Dreadlord. So where Strahd von Zarovich is the Dreadlord, the ruler of Barovia. The Dreadlord for the domain of Shadowborn Manor was a sentient sword called Ebenbane. It's like long story about how it got to be that way, but basically it's a demon soul trapped inside a sword. And GM basically flavored this as a haunted house scenario that we were going through, flavored with tinges of things like The Ring and similar kinds of horror imagery. There was lots of stuff about like rope maidens and rope shrine maidens and things like that. It did get really heavy, and like if we were to try and, we would have a whole bunch of caveats and a session 0 and a whole bunch of like things like using an X card these days. But again, these were still like times where we didn't really know about those sorts of things. So, and I created a character called Damon. Cannot remember what his surname was, and he was a 16-year-old silversmith, or at least training to be a silversmith. He was very dexterous, very good at fine manipulation. He grew up in basically the domain next to Shadowborn Manor, which was a highly authoritarian domain. It was ruled by a paladin who strict adherent to the law. I think her name is Elena, or Eleni. She basically was a tyrant who epitomized basically lawful good gone wrong. In her mind, I mean, obviously it's lawful evil in terms of alignment of the domain. But Damon was a kind of like rebellious urchin. This is third ed now, so beg pardon. So feats are a thing, and Damon had a feat called Redheaded. The mechanical advantage of this was that I got to use one first level druid spell a day for free, and I was playing a rogue. That was his build. But the drawback, it was a feat which carried a drawback in that you have red hair and you are basically considered a child of the Fae, or at least Fae touched, and therefore prone to basically people talking about you and like various negative social modifiers as a result of that. Not mechanically, but for gameplay purposes. Damon had spent some time in prison for sedition and just generally under suspicion of being a troublemaker. His aunt was background story was that his aunt was a member of the ruling clergy, and so had conspired to basically have him imprisoned for his own good. But anyway, this was like prior to the adventure starting. He got caught up with this adventuring group, and so we were going through basically a Japanese flavored haunted house scenario. Hello, Maple. What's going on here? We are talking about my role-playing history. We are wandering down memory lane for a chill chatting session. And so, Damon. So, content warnings for a lot of horror tropes here. I will caveat this with the thing that the GM decided to try and do something really interesting, which was introduce kind of like things out of time. So what we would keep coming across cassette recorders and audio logs, and he actually had a dictaphone that he would give us with tapes that he had recorded as we were going through this. Obviously, completely anachronistic to fantasy characters, but we quickly worked out what this kind of technology was. We also encountered a golf club that I think it was a golf club +4 that you could activate its powers by calling out 4, and it imbued it with some kind of special ability. So again, a little bit of humour in that, and actually for this game, it really worked. Due to timing and interest and such, we ended up losing 2 of the players, so it actually ended up being a 2-hander with me and one other guy who was playing a swashbuckler type of character. And as we went through kind of like shifting rooms and various kind of like puzzles, his character started going more and more unhinged. What we would describe as gaining psychoses. His character became convinced that my character, because he was like, I was playing a 16-year-old, was his infant child, and he even went like the psychosis was such that he would he did the whole or the character did the pretending to be pregnant, and like carrying around swaddling clothes post birth. And yeah, as I say, things got really heavy, and to be honest, that was one of the reasons why I decided to call it a day as well, because I was getting more and more uncomfortable with the way things were progressing, and also not being much of a horror fan. I felt that like we had reached the limits of where I was comfortable with. So that campaign kind of like ground out to beg pardon. My nose is really itchy today. The GM some years later would send us an update of where he envisaged that campaign ending, and to be honest, like it was a whole host of things that, whilst interesting, again relied on horror tropes that I was not basically a fan of. So actually, beg pardon, folks. Ooh, sorry about that. I actually, as I say, going through my emails, I actually just discovered the name of that campaign. He'd called it "Cold Mirrors and Mockery: A Serenade of Suffering in D Minor." And yeah, remember we're early 20s. We're early 20s here. Whilst an interesting title, I think unfortunately the game didn't quite live up to its to such a name. So where do we go from there? The guy who was playing the other player in that game decided to run a game based in a homebrew world called Seas of Blood, with the premise that the starting characters, 3 of us, one of whom was the GM from the previous game, would be like pit fighters, gladiators who basically escape from indentured servitude in the pit and go out into the world to make their way. And let me think. This guy was called Varian. Actually, I should remark at this point that for all that the previous campaign, the Ravenloft game, ended up in a strange and uncomfortable place. I really like the character I built there. As I say, he was a rogue. He had... Oh, actually, I forgot to say. He had quite a few drawbacks. He had a constitution and a strength penalty, which in a horror game is not ideal starting points. He basically was high dex, low con, low strength, high wisdom build. So... Next, we move on to Varian in this homebrew game, and Varian is a cleric. A cleric of a god who does not exist yet. I talked to the GM about the kind of character that I wanted to play, and I didn't really like any of the gods that he had built in as like standard. So I asked him if I could create a god, and he allowed me to do so. And so I cannot remember the name of the god that I created, but he was a god of logic and puzzles, of fate and destiny. Yes, 11 thirds. That's exactly right. So the premise of the character was I was going to be playing a proselytizing cleric who would be trying to win followers, converts to his faith. He obviously had power, so obviously he could demonstrate that he had divine capability. But Wonder Woman, that sounds like Yamayugi. I will confess that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was something that I was reading around that time, particularly the tankobon. So I was reading the manga for Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time, and it is entirely possible that was an influencing factor. So yes, I was playing this cleric who was trying to gain convert. One of the other characters, so as I say, was being played by the GM of the Ravenloft game. He was playing a good necromancer, and so he was kind of like, I think he was neutral alignment. Basically, raising the dead for practical and good purposes, in effect. Like one of the, obviously he garnered a lot of distrust for doing so. But like one of the things that he did was we got trapped in a village due to a snowstorm, and he raised some skeletons to clear path through the snow so that supplies could get in. Pushing Daisies vibes. Not for this character, but yeah, I can definitely see that. Pushing Daisies, excellent series. I really wish it had not been cancelled before its time. Another show that deserved a lot more. But the one again. This campaign didn't last very long. The GM actually got bored of running it, and so ended up giving up. But for what it did, I was very pleased with the roleplay that I did with this character. It was a character concept I was very pleased with. And like one particular incident that I remember, again, a lot of these come down to kind of like PvP-ish kind of actions. So we had to get something from a reclusive wizard who lived in a manor at the top of a mountain. The only way that we could actually convince him to give us what we wanted was that Thandariel, so the necromancer, basically convinced him that he was a fellow wizard of good standing, and could talk about things like that. Could talk about arcane matters with him. So the wizard said that he would agree to it if Thandariel could basically come up to the castle. And they would and provide a banquet. Thandariel supplies cooks and waiters and such. Obviously, he had no draw. So me and the other character ended up being drafted into doing the cooking and the serving. However, in doing so, Thandariel played his part to the utmost snobbish and snottiness, to the point of being very condescending towards my character, towards Varian, and the other guy whose name I cannot remember. I think it was Rad or Jar, something like that. Tor, maybe. And the dinner happened, and on the route down, Thandariel was walking ahead of us, and me and the other guy were basically grumbling about how Thandariel had acted. And Thandariel would just carry on talking about how well it went, and you're all like talking and such, and like not even noticing that we were so pissed off about his actions, that Varian basically took one of the daggers out of his belt, and as Thandariel got to like a bend in the road, basically just threw the dagger so that it embedded into a tree right next to him, and walked up and said like something along the lines of, "If you ever talk to us in that manner again, that dagger is going between your eyes." And then we walked off back to our lodgings for that, and that's just like a moment which sticks out for me. Yeah. And I was playing a kind of like a kind of wimpy cleric, but again, high dex builds for the I mean, Varian was not really a badass, but he was very charismatic about presentation. Yeah, I think shoulder blades probably would have been a better idea, but in the heat of the moment, what are you to do? So where do we go from there? Oh, yes. So we're into maybe about 2004-ish here. And a game which ran for, I think, only about a couple of months, in the space of which I managed to get through 3 characters. And these were not characters who were wimpy. These were 2 of them were rangers, and one of them was a psychic warrior. So, game being run by the GM who played Thandariel, who ran the horror game. Shell smiles. So, I started off with a guy called Corwin. He was a ranger of Shandical, the Faerunian god of winds and travel, of caravans and explorers. And the main reason I wanted to play him is because in 3rd Ed you got access to what were called prestige classes, which you could qualify for, and basically again gave you additional powers. A lot of speciality priests from 2nd Ed got converted into prestige classes, and so the Windwalker was the prestige class for speciality clerics of Shandical, and in 3rd Ed, Rangers could qualify to play. Thank you so much, Rio here, for 200 bits. Thank you so much. Very much welcome. Okay, take care, Jackson. Hopefully we will still be going way to say. Got a lot of characters to go through. I hope you're enjoying this. I hope this is interesting for you folks. It's definitely been a kind of like eye opener for me, just going back and remembering. Jackson, I'm probably going to run. What time is it? 7:15. Oh gosh. 8:30 maybe. The latter parts of this go hopefully a bit quicker. I thought I would actually be a little further along by that, but yeah, probably at least for another 45 minutes, maybe an hour or so. Oh, thank you very much, folks. That's very lovely for you to say. So yes, so I'm playing a ranger with a view to becoming a Windwalker, and I think by the time Corwin died, he had just managed to acquire the first level of Windwalker. He was primarily a ranger, so the spellcast. I think there was a spellcasting requirement that took a while to get to meet. We were about to go into an underground complex, and as the first part of doing so. So, human ranger. No, I was playing a half-elf, a half-elven ranger called Corwin. We had to make a stop. We were heading into the Underdark, which is basically the level of Faerun underground, where the Drow live primarily, and a lot of other denizens of darkness. So we had to make a stop in a drow city called Menzoberranzan, and obviously because we were not a drow, we were having to take things. We have to be very cautious and skulk around to try and find out what we needed before we headed further into the darkness. Corwin ran into trouble in an alleyway. And we ended up facing down. A pair of vampires, at the pointy fangs of which Corwin met his demise. Cue character number 2 for this game, who was another ranger, because I was determined to play a Windwalker, and this guy came in at I think I made this guy a cleric windwalker, so that I could get access to more levels quicker. Because if I remember correctly, at level 4 of the prestige class, you got access to an ability called Windwalk, which was you could basically walk on air for a given amount of time each day. Now, this character comes in to replace Corwin. We venture further into the Underdark, and we run into a young blue dragon who we end up fighting. Said blue dragon wins a grapple check against my character, who at this point admittedly is on very low life. Grabs him, flies down the tunnel and into a large cavern with a lake in it, and promptly drops him into the lake. Character DM rules that that I have no capacity to react, and so my character drowns in that lake, having fought during the fight with the dragon. I'm a little bit peeved because I should have been able to at least activate Windwalk because I wasn't actually dead, and be able to pull out of the drop and at least walk away. I mean, admittedly, the dragon would probably have seen and dealt with me at that point, so I was almost certainly dead one way or another. But at least I wish I could. I wish I'd had the opportunity. So that character passes away, and enter character number 3. This time playing an elven psychic warrior. Now, a little bit of a so itchy. Little bit of a digression. The 3rd ed psionic rules were broken. So broken. They changed things a bit for the 3.5 versions of the psionic rules, and I think it was one of the main reasons for moving to an interim version of the rule set was the psionics in 3rd ed were just broken. And I built a character. I decided, right, I'm going to go all out and actually build the most powerful build I could for the options that were available to me. So I built a guy who was an elven psychic warrior, which meant that I had fighter capabilities coupled with Scion powers. And a lot of these Scion powers basically duplicated similar wizard spells. So in 3rd ed, there were... I was really determined not to lose this character. Especially since most of the other players were still on character number 1. So where wizards would have your... wizards in 3rd ed had access to stat boosting spells, where you could... you cast it, and you would gain a +2 or a +4 bonus for to a given stat for a number of hours equal to your caster level, I think it was. So these were things like Bull Strength, which gave you bonus to Strength, Bear's Endurance, Owl's Wisdom, Hawk's Charisma, or something like that. Basically, each of the stats had a spell that would boost that stat, and you had to learn each one individually. Scions had access to one power that you got to choose which stat it affected for expending your power points. And where wizards have spell slots, Scions and Psionic characters had power points, and this was a pool of points that you basically got to allocate, much in the way that like sorcerers have. Could cast things on the fly, so could most like Scions and such. You just had to expend a number of points from your pool. Now, when you coupled this with where wizards could couple things with meta magic feats, so things like quicken spell and extend spell and maximize spell, you could basically through a selection of feats, you could basically do things like, well, I will make this spell cast its spell at its highest ability, and I will make this spell last for 24 hours or something like that, just so that you could like do extra things. Scions had meta psionic feats which did exactly the same thing. But where the Scions excelled is they had access to another feat. Cannot remember what this feat was called, but the gist of it is that after expending power points to cast to activate a power, you could roll a dice, or rather, you could make a knowledge psionics check, which basically the psionic equivalent of knowledge arcana in third ed, and if you passed that check, your power expenditure was reduced to 0, effectively meaning that you cast that power for free, regardless of any additional power points spent to enhance it. This meant that my psionic warrior could have +6 to all his stats for 24 hours for pretty much free. The chance of failing the knowledge roll was something like 10 or 15%. So for the most part, that seems broken, Nibbly3. Yes, the psionic rules in third ed were broken. Super broken. Yeah, beautifully broken, Shy Magpie. Oh wow, sorry, I'm really sorry about this. My nose is just so itchy. Yes, and I really did exploit the heck out of that character to keep him live during. So, in terms of the character, again, I cannot remember what his name is, but he was playing a Moon Elven psionic warrior of in allegiance to Sehanine Moonbow, the Elven moon goddess. And the reason for him being in the game was that he had come to find one of the other characters. Like, he had been sent by his temple to find one of the other characters. The session after my character arrives, that character dies. In the most ironic turn of fate. So, yeah. This is the character that would see me out to the end of the game. Well, actually, will kind of see me out to the end of the game, because the final session was effectively a big battle between elves and demons, and in that big battle, my character died, so that was character number 3 for this campaign, but not before we encountered one of the demonic forces commanders, who was a vampire. A vampire by the name of Corwin. Because the GM had taken my first character from this game, who, as I said, died at the fangs of a vampire, and had him vamped to come back and be an antagonist. Yes. My character didn't die to Corwin, but yes, we did encounter him. Shelton, side note, Anil, did you just have awful luck in dice rolls, etc., compared to the other players? Surprised that you were cycling through characters so quickly compared to the others. Seems frustrating. No more so than anybody else. Like, variance probably played its part. I have to admit, like, the death of Corwin was annoying because I had invested a lot of time into his backstory and the character I wanted to play. So having to come up with another one was a bit more frustrating. And admittedly, characters number 2 and 3, as I say, I don't remember their names, and I don't think I put a lot of detail into their backstory. Actually, I'm going to try and get through the next bits. Relatively quickly. So then there was a bunch of one-offs. I don't really know what with exactly. I know that a guy we met at uni, who we introduced to D&D, decided to try his hand at DMing an Everon game. And so I played a character called Izariel, who, if I remember correctly, was another ranger with a kind of swashbuckler build. Because for those who are familiar with the Everon setting, in that world there are a group of special characters who belong to dragon-marked houses. So you belong to a family line which can manifest special powers. And I was playing Izariel de Lyrandar, a scion of House Lyrandar, a half-elven family who manifest the Mark of Storm. And so I was playing a ranger, a swashbucklery type. No, I think I wasn't a ranger. I think I was a fighter. I think this was a fighter build, because I wanted to go into a special prestige class, which was basically the House Lyrandar prestige class, where you got to wield lightning powers. So the idea was that I built a character who dual wielded rapiers, with a view to being able to charge them up with electricity, so that he could be an electrical dervish. Stanley Shah, sounds like you're not generally a fan of playing big beefy tank type. No, most of my game playing career, I have played characters who are support characters. They may be faith, they may be magical support, but they are generally second line characters when it comes to combat. Yeah, unfortunately this game did not last long, so I think I only barely scratched the surface of being able to get my preferred build with it. Then we go into, so we're around the 2005-2006 mark here, and the GM who ran the Ravenloft game and the one where I lost 3 characters, he unfortunately was taken ill and had to have surgery, which left him housebound for a while. so he wanted to get back. Like, we'd fallen out of touch a little bit with him up to this point. Like, we'd moved on a little bit. But he wanted to start a new game. He wanted to run a new game, and we agreed. We kind of like got to the old band back together again to play a game. And he said he gave us a couple of options, and we opted to play an all elf game. And we were going to be back in the Forgotten Realms. And it would be set on the island of Everon, which is the elven homeland in the Forgotten Realms. So it's some way to the west of Waterdeep, off the Sword Coast. And I ran through a couple of scenarios, and I came up with a. I decided I'd go back to my roots a little bit. And I decided to play a gold elf, all elf all the time, yeah. A gold elf evoker, and I think we started off. We started off at level 3, and he was 1 level of evoker and 2 levels of a class called Elf Paragon. Can't remember exactly what the Paragon did, but basically it's like if you were playing a class that tied into your racial heritage, like elves are very good at magic, so there are a lot of elven wizards. Then it basically amplified your base class to do things. So this guy is called Neroniel Starim, Nero for short. And he is basically a support wizard in one of the Evermet militias. Now, key here being surname, because as I've said, Forgotten Realms is a very extensive campaign. Extensive setting. There is a lot of lore and a lot of history. And House Starim is a very notable Gold Elven family in the Forgotten Realms lore. So I created this this guy as a member of this family, and he had status. Now, this character didn't actually last very long, but the game started with the four players waking up in a dungeon. All 4 of us in the same cell, which is quite large. And there's a lot of strange looking equipment and chains. And one of us is tied down. And one is trapped in a bathtub. Some people might kind of be recognizing this start. The 4 players, Shell has got it right. The 4 players of this game had not seen Thor. Oh wow! Thank you very much for that generosity, Moliesu. Given out 5 gift subs. Wow. So welcome to Iwan Nightor, Senalisha, Kleinavink, Jarlith, and Book of Mac. Welcome to the channel. Thank you, Molietsu. That is extremely generous. Thank you so much. Yeah, so Shell Smiles, yes, you got it right. We were in the opening scene of Saw. However, this was lost on the players because none of us had actually seen Saw. And we got the voice over, the mysterious voice from midair, telling us, you will have to harm, like, one of you has the key inside you, and such. And it's like, we all basically turned around and said, nope. Thank you, Piper, for subscribing. Thank you very much, indeed. Yeah, you're right to go. Oh no, Shell Smiles. And hello, Deity in Whitechapel. Welcome to the stream. The players basically revolted at this, and we endeavoured to basically find a way to free ourselves that didn't involve harming people we didn't know. And through dint of a certain amount of capabilities and fiat, we managed to escape from that cell, and basically discovered that we were in a village that was under attack by strange forces, and we kind of like helped mobilize the village defenses to beat back these things. Run forward a few sessions. We end up heading into an Otyugh burrow, and those anybody who knows the system, and these are particularly nasty, foul-smelling creatures. They are garbage eaters, and it turns out that a wizard did it, i.e. the wizard who had originally captured us was keeping a pair of Otyughs as his waste disposal, and guarding his treasure vault, that we had to infiltrate in order to try and, we were trying to defeat him and such. Nero unfortunately perishes during this combat, requiring me to come up with a new character. Thus enters Valperon Foronderol, who I will talk about after a quick break. So get up, stretch your legs, take a comfort break, grab a drink, snack if you need to. Yeah, Nero, alas. Idle Snake, welcome to the stream. I'm just about to go on a quick break, and we'll be back in a few moments. Take care, folks. Hello, and welcome back. Hope everyone managed to grab a drink. In case anyone has just joined us, we are taking a stroll down memory lane and looking at my role-playing history over the last 27 years or so. So, we come back to one, probably the most well thought out, and at least as far as backstory goes, probably one of my most favourite characters I ever created. If you'll indulge me, this is a character I actually have more details about than some of those. So, yeah, we're in late 2005 here. And so, as I said, Neronial Starum, my gold elf wizard, has passed away. The party recover his body, and actually, do they? I'm just trying to remember because I am. No. Okay. So yes, I remember now. The party leave. The party make a hasty escape. Like on Neronial's death, the party make an escape from the Otu Borough, and they are forced to leave behind. Nero's body, and so they make their way to the Starum estate to let his family know that he has died. And I was in two minds about the character I wanted to create. So I decided to leave it in the hands of the other players. I wrote a bit of fiction to give them basically the option of who they wanted to see. And I found the bit of fiction I wrote. So, as I say, if you'll indulge me. The service in memorial of Nero's passing is a small affair, held at the small garden shrine of the Starum Villa just outside Loithelspar. The attendees are few. Yourselves, Neronial's immediate family and classmates make up the majority of those present. Only one or two of the more important Starum dignitaries have shown up, and L'Oreal, who I can't remember exactly who L'Oreal is, but L'Oreal is conspicuous by his absence. The words commending him to the Seldarine, his service in Corellon's name, and the prayer to Sehanine to shepherd his spirit safely to Arvandor pass over you, almost lost in your private thoughts at Nero's death. The congregated people break up slowly, making their way back to Nero's family home for a small reception. At the reception, you catch sight of a furtive moon elf, on the edge of perception, almost like he's trying hard not to be noticed. You seem to recall catching a glimpse of him towards the back of those assembled at the service. Nero's father, Feraliath, comes over and tries to find out more details of his death. You get the feeling that he is trying to diplomatically see if you'll be recovering Nero's body. As you leave that evening, the more alert of you pick up sounds of a disturbance near the back of the property. Being curious, you move to investigate and discover a hushed argument in progress between the mysterious moon elf fellow and a gold elf female who you recognise to be Nero's sister, Shalayara, who seems somewhat indignant. You are not welcome here. Leave before I call the guards and have you forcibly removed. I'm as much Nero's friend as anyone else here. You have no right to bar me entry. I only wanted to give my condolences to your parents and pay my respects. You are nothing less than a grace to the Toitel Kassir. That's the name of the Moon Elven race in Faerun. Bad influence on Neronial. That you remain friends with you after Master Echon dismissed you is a stain that we will have to bear. Leave now. Your association with the Starums is at an end. You shame Nero with your words and attitude, Shalayara. Don't worry, you shall not have cause to see me around here again, and you'll be free to carry on cursing me behind my back and in whatever circles you choose to tarry. Since I cannot pay my respects here, I will go to Corellon's Grove and seek communion with his spirit there. Very well, I will not stop you doing so. Her tone softened slightly. I understand that Neronial's passing is hard for you, but it's infinitely worse for me and my father. You know the problems we have, and Nero's working hard to try and solve them. Without him, L'Oreal will continue unthreatened until I can graduate from the tutelage of Sehanine's clergy, and on your journey to Corellon's Grove, dwell on the fact that you are directly responsible for his death. She turns and re-enters the house. You quickly remove yourselves unnoticed from the uncomfortable scene. The following day you are sought out, separately by both Shalayara and the Moon Elf, who introduces him as Valperon Ferondorol. Both have the same request. Permission to join your group and reclaim Nero's body. So, that was what I gave to the other players, and asked them to pick. Would they want me to play Shaliara, Nero's sister, and who is a respected healer in the service of Sehanine Moonbow, or Valperon Ferondoril, a Moon Elven scout, and one of the few remaining members of House Ferondoril, which is a elven house with a bad reputation. Piper, I will put that in chat. Because again, going back to, I love making characters who play off existing lore, and in the Forgotten Realms lore, House Ferondoril were effectively exiled from Elven society. In their history, they have a group of power mad mages who attempted a coup, I think on Evermet or something like that, and so they were defeated. Very few of them are remaining, and the few who are often like exiles or outcasts. So, I put that choice. I put that choice to them, and I think it was by a vote of 2-1. Valperon was the character they chose for me to play. So, what I would then do is talk to the GM, because this is, as I said, this is me age 25, I believe, and I talked to my GM, and I asked her, and I think some of you in chat probably have a good idea where this is going. Sorry, throat's a little bit. I asked my GM if it was okay for Valperon to be Neroniel's ex-boyfriend. I basically asked my GM if it was okay for me to play a gay character. And bear in mind, it's like nobody, like none of the fiction we had read, none of the source books or anything like that had ever depicted a non-straight character. And all the characters I had played up until this point were ostensibly straight, where any kind of like relationships had come into it. It hadn't really crossed my mind until this point to actually voice the concept of playing a character who was more like me. And I was very much worried that even though like I was out to this group of friends, like I came out at 19, that it would be like some kind of affront or some kind of like misstep for me to play a gay character in a world which was not shown to have any such characters. And thankfully, he said yes. He said that was perfectly fine. That there was no problem whatsoever. What I wanted to do was reveal this through gameplay that that Valperon was Nero's ex, because obviously they had broken up whilst under tutelage of a particular mage master, Exalted, partly because of their difference in standing. Nero was a gold elf. Valperon was a silver elf, a moon elf, from a disgraced house. So there were obviously like status and secrecy issues. Like when they had been dating, I said in the background, like it had been in secret, that they had that it was a big stain on Nero's honor and such, if he was found consorting with Valperon. I actually have the background I wrote for Valperon. Let me just double check. So yeah, actually, I'll read out the background I gave to my my DM for this. So, Valperon for Underdark is a fairly nondescript moon elf, and he enjoys the anonymity that being out in the countryside brings. However, this state of affairs has only recently come to pass, as he accepts that his former lifestyle is no more. His resentment at being unable to move amongst the courtly circles of Loithal Spar is fading, as he devotes himself to more scholarly and wilderness pursuits that take him into the wilds and away from civilization. However, he will never forget how he used to live, and the benefits of city life, something that has a tendency to make him melancholic. Valperon was born as the only son and heir of the Feronduril clan, a moon elven house that had seen better days. Having never really recovered from the loss of most of their status, lands, and members following the blunders of the family patriarch in Mithranor, even those in Evermet felt the sting when news filtered back to the island. Growing up, Valperon managed to ingratiate himself with one of the dilettante groups of elven youths, a lot from the other notable families, that prowled Loithal Spar and the surrounding lands looking for amusement. It was in one of these groups that Valperon met Neroniel Starim, the two becoming firm friends much to the relief of Valperon's mother, who saw this as an opportunity to raise their status on the back of the Starims. Following Nero being accepted to study under Master Exalted, Valperon entreated the sage to be allowed to study there as well. His keen mind brought acceptance, but his somewhat wild ways would soon prove to be a problem. Nero and Valperon's friendship strengthened during this time, with the mutual exploration of old lore and languages, both having the intellects to eagerly glean what they could from the tutelage. Over this time, this friendship deepened into something more. Nero's time was usually divided between his studies at the Areth Alachen and with Master Exalted, while Valperon usually frequented the seamier side of Loithal Spar's underbelly when not at Exalted's tower, feeling the separation from Nero quite keenly. However, things came to a head when Exalted, feeling disturbed at the reports he was getting about Valperon's behaviour, discovered the young lovers together and moved to dismiss Valperon. The affair was kept under wraps, the only disclosure being cited that Valperon was a bad influence on Neroniel, and was leaving for the good of them both. Valperon took this rather badly, and spent many weeks in depression and getting involved with some disreputable activities and persons, including some of the humans in the trade quarter. It was Nero who brought him out of this, going to look for him and bringing him round. The two resumed their relationship, but much more covertly, and with Valperon making an effort to be more respectable. Eventually, Valperon decided to fade into the background, not wishing more scandal to befall his poor family. His mother had already disowned him and remarried, ceding what remained of the family assets to another house. Valperon moved to Dolinar and resumed his studies there, taking more of an interest in fieldcraft as well. So, yeah. Oh dear, Nimblick. So that was what I gave my GM, and he was happy. He was happy with that, and we would look to bring out aspects of that in the sessions that followed. Valperon's build was Scout Archivist, Scout being a base class. Actually, both of them being base classes. Actually, from various different books. I think Scout was in one of the the Fieldcraft books, and there was a horror specific book that the Archivist comes from. So suffice to say that the group went back in and this time with Valperon's help, they were able to defeat the evil wizard and recover Nero's body. Valperon returned Nero's body to his family, but was forbidden from having any further contact with them. They Shalayara thanked him for returning the body, and then basically said, "Never darken our door again." Oh, thank you, Jory. Yeah, that was, as I say, the very first gay character I ever built, and I honestly was scared about asking my GM if I could play one, despite them being like generally accepting of everything. The campaign didn't last much longer after that, and the idea was that after the recovery of the body, there was going to be downtime of 10 years before we resumed play again. So everyone went away and blue booked. And so for those who don't know, blue booking is a term where you go away, write up some stuff that happened to your character in the interim. Oftentimes this is to provide the GM with to be helpful to your GM and provide them with plot hooks that they can later use. And I wrote up a fairly extensive blue book for Valperon's 10-year hiatus. A lot of it being depressively drunk in various ports around the Sword Coast. Unfortunately, I cannot find that, and I have looked. It may still be on a hard drive somewhere. But it is not, unfortunately, in my email archives, which I was really disappointed by, because I really wanted to actually go back and read that. And like, even though that was like 25-year-old me, I still think that was actually good writing I did. And I would have liked to go back and maybe revisit it, or maybe retinker it and put it out again in some form. If I ever do find it, I will let you. I will let you all know. And that basically brings us to the last of the big D&D campaigns I played in with that group of people. What time is it? It's actually, wow, it's 8 o'clock. Are people happy for me to continue? Okaya2 was about to log in. Hey, Bryn. Okaya2? Player 2. Oh, okay. If that's what I think you're referring to, yes, it's at this point. Yeah, I thought so. it's at this point that, yes, Bryn, aka Brave Sir Fibblethip in the chat, enters the picture. There's a bunch of stuff about things that I was running. So a lot of the reason why they're in a long running game for me to be a player in is because at this point I would take up the mantle of GMing for a variety of groups, including new players. One of the last games I played in actually is the one I was talking about, where I was playing the Everon game actually, and he was next door all along. Yes, and in that game, we lost a player, and at that point, one of the other players, who, this is the guy who played the halfling who needled me, who played the Ravenloft character who pretended to be who was convinced that they were my mother, the GM of the Seas of Blood campaign, suggested a new player. Said player being Bryn. Now, the story of how all that runs together is a story for another time. But basically, that game got me to meet Bryn, and basically triggered off the whole next set of my role-playing career, and basically my life. And I am very, very lucky that I have met Bryn and got introduced to his circle of friends, which very rapidly became my circle of friends. And I ended up effectively distancing myself a bit from my old school group. So we are now basically at the end of 2007, beginning of 2008, and Bryn introduces me to a game, to a non-D&D game, and we start playing Exalted. Now, Exalted is a property from White Wolf, and now produced under license by Onyx Path. See your friends, they're my friends now. That pretty much was it, barring the time at. Exalted. For anyone unfamiliar with Exalted, it is a real trip. It is probably one of my all-time top favourite settings. Unfortunately, it's a setting written by White Wolf, which means that the mechanics are an absolute pain, to put it mildly. Admittedly, like with Exalted Second Ed, if you have a vaguely mathematically or scientifically centered mind, it's not too difficult to get your head round the mechanics. But it's a lot of dice. It being a White Wolf system makes it a bucket of dice system. You are rolling an awful lot of d10s. I had to invest in basically a big bundle bag from Chessex to increase my D10 collection at that time. Onyx Path is pretty good at fixing White Wolf stuff. Unfortunately, with Third Ed Exalted, I don't think that they have been able to get away from the previous problems as much as they would have liked. I mean, the Exalted Third Ed player's book is 600 odd pages. If you were to print it out, it's a very weighty tome, and I think they actually have got there. There are a couple of things in Third Ed I think are actually worth than they were in second ed. Yes, Flaky Doom. They also are putting out the new version of Changeling. White Wolf did both of the original versions of Changeling, and they are very good at. And obviously, it's mage and vampire, and Geist and Mummy and a whole bunch of other things, which are amazing settings. I like almost all of the White Wolf settings in some form or another. Exalted and Scion being at the top of that list, and I just wish that the mechanics were a lot easier. It's such a crunchy system that it puts people off playing it, and that's one of the reasons why I am still working on a hack for Scion. To make it more streamlined and less front-loaded. So I'll probably talk about game design mechanics at a later date, and maybe even hopefully bring Ben and Johnny or maybe even Sasha on board for a talk like that, because I think they have a lot to contribute on that front. But suffice to say, I created a character in Exalted. My very first, I think Bryn ran a taster session, one shot, which I liked, and then I decided, and then he said he was going to do a campaign, and so I created a character for that, a character by the name of Dr. Azael Lorraine, who was a. So for those who know the system, he was a solar, which means that you are the chosen of the sun god, and he was a twilight, which means that he was intelligence focused effectively. So his skills were primarily aimed towards, like, he had full ranks in medicine, in crafting, alchemy, and potions. So he was a doctor before he exalted, and he was. I don't have a spare USB slot, so I can't actually pull up his character sheet. But he was. So when you exalt as a solar, and I think as most of the other exalt types as well, you have what's called a motivation, which is your driving force, the reason for you having been exalted, and for you to dedicate your powers and your drive towards something that you want to achieve, for good or for ill, depending on your nature. Azael's motivation was to create a universal panacea. He was a doctor. He wanted to create a universal cure-all for the ills of creation. And so that was his driving force. Now, exalts also come with flaws, obviously, that they are cursed with. A lot of these curses are often centered around your what are called your virtues, and so when you're creating the character, you have to pick a virtue flaw and something called a limit break condition. Because you are cursed in such a way, if there are activities or situations which trigger you building up limit, which is a mechanical, which is basically a stress mechanic. When you hit 10 points of limit, you go into what's called limit break, Thank you very much, Ex Libris Crow, for gifting a sub to Flaky of Doom. Welcome to the channel, Flaky. Oh, wow. Thankfully, I have some water as well. So, my limit, Azir's limit break condition was tied to his virtue of temperance, and the limit break condition was when people act childishly or intemperately. Now, one of as well as being a medic, Azir was also the party's sorcerer. Magic being quite a difficult thing to cast in Exalted, so you are very limited. And one of the spells that he had was a transportation spell that basically generated a small cloud which could carry a number of people, and this cloud basically travelled at fast speed across the land. Now, very first session, having just met his new companions, they decide that they have to travel. So he conjures up the cloud, and they set off on their journey to, can't exactly remember where, but not 10 minutes into the journey, one of the other characters decides that it would be funny if they decided to take a wee out of the cloud, and Azir did not find this particularly amusing, and had to roll limit. So yeah, intemperate behaviour displayed by his companions. Roll for limit, got a 3. So I started out the campaign on 3 out of 10 limit. And this doesn't reset at each session. The only time that limit resets is, I think there are certain charms or things that you can do it, but it's generally, it accrues as a stress mechanic until you hit 10, limit break, and go back to 0. Well, I think in the course of the campaign, which I think ran for maybe, let's see, we were still living in Stratford. So I think this campaign ran from about 2008 to maybe 2010. Moved from there in 2012. So I think it ran till about 2011, if memory serves me correctly. So it was a fairly long running game, and we ended up adding players to the group. So I think over the course of the game, I probably limit broke about 3 or 4 times. Yeah, too many players by the end, but I maintain that you had a really good idea. It just didn't unfortunately quite work out that way. So what we ended up with is, I think we started out with a group of 4 or 5 players, which moved up to, which ended, like, by the time the campaign ended, it was 9 players. Learn your lesson after that, yeah. So I think we got to 6 players, all who were playing solos, so all playing the similar kind of characters to what I was, but across the 5 different types. the way the part of the adventures was that we ended up becoming advisors to a to a country that we founded, we ended up doing service for a particular country, and despite our solar heritage, they gave us advisor positions, and we basically looked to fortify the surrounding area against the kind of like the big bads, the Empire, which are the Empire of the Dragon-Blooded, who were ranging against us. At which point, 3 new players entered the game, and they were playing counterparts to our kind of characters. So in Exalted, you have the Solars, who are chosen of the Sun God, and you have Lunars, chosen of Luna, the Moon Goddess. Now, in the fiction for Exalted Second Ed, there were only ever 300 Solars in existence. 300 or 100? No, 300, yeah. There were only ever 300 Solars in existence. When one died, their spark went on to exalt another person in the world, and so you have like a continuity of the solar heritage. Now, Lunars, there were 300 Lunars. Every Luna had a solar mate, and every solar had a lunar mate, and these heritages carried on backwards and forth. So, in a similar way to how the Trill in Star Trek kind of operate, is that the memories and heritage line will pass through your exaltation, be it solar or lunar or sidereal or whatever, and you may end up crossing paths with your mate across history. Whether or not any two people at any given time want to be in a relationship or anything like that is completely up to them. But in essence, if a Luna is in proximity to their solar mate, they will know it. The solar doesn't necessarily know if they are in proximity to their lunar mate, for example. But there are paired. There are effectively, these are paired exaltations. Now, we added the campaign added 3 new players, all playing Lunars, to the game. Probably around 2010 or so. And the idea was that we were now facing this party of 9. We're now facing a creation spanning threat. And in order to make it a bit easier on himself, Bryn decided, and I think this was a really nice idea, to split the game into 3 sets of 3 and run it as 3 different groups who are all working towards the same end, but would be operating in different parts of the world in order to achieve them. And effectively, all 3 parts had to succeed in order for the world to be saved. Unfortunately, the game ended before, unfortunately fell apart due to time and such, before we actually came to a proper conclusion. And I don't know about everything that happened on other parts of it, but the group that I was in consisted of me, a Twilight medic. Yeah, I think we did manage. Well, I'm not sure if we did manage to finish our bit. Actually, I think we managed to complete it, but we didn't end well. So the story of this is, there was me, Twilight Solar, a doctor, and the sorcerer. I am accompanied by a nightcaster, a nightcast solar. So think rogue under other systems. They are the stealthy characters. They are the infiltrators. The people break and enter, assassins, etc. Things like that. They have a lot of abilities that allow them to move stealthily. Yeah. And this is a character played by our good friend Josh, who folks who have been listening to the latest RQ Gaming special Forethought is we played in a game which was effectively the precursor to Forethought. So he's playing this Nightcast character. The third member of our group is a Luna. Now, I did not know, Asia did not know, and I'm not even sure I knew out of character at this point. Oh no, I probably did actually, out of character. I did not know that the guy playing the Luna was my Luna mate. He obviously knew that he was. But I hadn't, in character, I had no clue. So the three of us were headed to the south of creation to a city called the Lap. And what's unique about the Lap is that it is a giant statue of a cross-legged figure, and the city is built on the different levels of this statue. We had to go in and infiltrate. We had to go in and infiltrate the ruler of the Lap's palace, and either steal something or blow something up. I can't quite remember. But with difficulty, we managed to accompany. We managed to accomplish the task, and as we are heading out of the city, the Nightcaster, Josh's character, decides that despite us having been pretty stealthy and such up to this point, decided that he wanted to have a little fun, and I think stole some horses, and I think it's either stole some horses or basically caused a commotion that forced us to leave the city in more haste and less stealthily than we had intended. Something like standing with one foot on the back of each horse and riding it out in front of the city's army. Yeah. That sort of thing. So basically, the three of us having to hot-foot it out of the city more speedily than intended, and not as stealthily as intended. Once we were far enough away out of the city and out of the range of the guard, Asia had been deathly silent up until this point, and once we did exhausted the horses and such, Asia conjured up the travel cloud and we were going to basically head back to our base. At which point, I roll for limit because of the knight's intemperate actions and limit breaker. So, Aether turns round and basically shouts at the Nightcaster, and like this was a 5-minute rant in character, basically telling him off and saying that you almost got us all killed and potentially risked our ability to be able to save the world. And having created the thing, it's like, I can no longer work with you. I step onto the cloud, tell him point blank, you are not coming with me. Turn to the guy playing the Luna and say, you have a choice. You can either come with me now, or I'm gone. I believe he boarded the cloud with me, and we sped off, leaving the Nightcast in the middle of the desert to his own devices. And I believe that was the last session that I played as that character. So, yeah, basically having limit broken. I mean, Flaky was like character-wise, like it was perfectly within his his character's nature to do something like that. And you're welcome, Bryn. And yeah, so I was left. So effectively, Aether was left having created a really bad impression in front of his Lunar mate, who was still working up whether or not to tell Aether that he was his fated partner. Yeah, fun times. I really like Aether. Aether was a really nice character to play. I am a little bit disappointed that I don't know what the outcome of that was. I'd like to think that the other two groups were successful and that we managed to save the world. The other character was very cool. Yes, Josh did actually make a very good Nightcaster. They were very good at what they were doing. It was just that last bit happened to work in just all the wrong ways. Yeah, hilarious how badly the two characters got on. Yeah, we sent probably the most intemperate member of the group with the most steadfast and straight-laced member. Oh, fun times. As I say, I think that was a even as explosive as it was, I think it was some really good role-playing that we did. So then there'd be a succession of one-off Exalted games, playing different types of Exalted. There's a sidereal character. Now, sidereals in the Exalted world are agents of heaven, and there are only ever 100 of them devoted to the 5 maidens. And I was playing a chosen of Serenity by the name of Nascent Blossom. Yes, I ran SPI, but I'm not talking about the campaigns that I ran, because that's probably for a different session, talking about the games I have actually run as GM. So I played Nascent Blossom, who was a chosen of Serenity, a Joybringer. Their speciality was that they had been raised as a yes, I will talk about that in a moment, actually, Bryn. So Nathan Blossom was a member of a dragon-blooded house, although he hadn't displayed dragon blood exaltation. But due to issues between families, had ended up being raised as basically as a prostitute in a brothel, and due to the treatment that he suffered in that environment, exalted as a sidereal, and ended up learning martial arts and abilities to go back and take revenge on those who had mistreated him, and would basically use seduction techniques in order to in order to get his way. Again, game didn't really last long. Then we've got where are we going? Sorry, let me look at my notes. So yeah, after Bryn's long-running game, Golden, which was called Golden Opportunity, a lot of the next games basically come. This is a bit out of order because I don't know exactly where they fall year-wise. It's all taking place between like 2011 and 2014. But we have a dragon-blooded game set in the Exalted world that Bryn ran after that, which was basically based on the TV show Sliders, where the three of us, the three players, created characters and ended up basically hopping between worlds. And on each world we had to basically try and find the gate that would get us out. Yeah, a Sliders SG1 mashup, effectively. So one of them was a water world where we had to sail between islands to try and find out, to try and puzzle out the runes. One of them was a world beset by perpetual winter, where we, in order to find the gate, we had to go into the one structure that we found and encounter a gentleman by the name of Ozymandias. And it turned out that the world we were on was Earth, but Earth as nuclear winter from the missiles as launched in Watchmen. Yes, and it was a brilliant. Yeah, we decided. Yeah, every time we passed through a gate, we did a die roll to pick up the to generate which world we would go to next. Really good idea. I mean, Bryn comes up with some very, very good campaign ideas. I think we only got through about 4 or 5 worlds before that campaign had to end, partly because Josh, who was one of the players in that game, ended up moving away from London with his family. Yeah, that coded periodic table, that was really weird to try and work out how to do what a periodic table is when you come from a fantasy world. We had 13 sessions and visit 12 worlds. Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was that many. Wow. That was neat. Actually, if I remember correctly, we ended that... Where we ended up was we effectively ended up on a hub world. And we discovered that Ozymandias had worked out how to follow us and had escaped from his world, or had basically escaped from his dying world into the hub world, and was going to try and find some other world to head to. Hey, Keyflowers. Yes, as Bryn's quite more eloquently or remembering than I am. And thank you, Jackson, for the 20 bits. However long ago that was. Apologies for that. So yeah, so that was probably the last major Exalted game I played. A friend of ours picked up Scion and decided to run a game. And thank you, Ryu here for the 200 bits. Much appreciated. And so in Scion, another White Wolf setting, you play children of the gods, different types of gods to Exalted. These time more real world, so it's a real world setting, and you play divine inheritors of various pantheons and abilities. Various pantheons and gods thereof. And so I created a Scion of Apollo called Dexter Blackwell. This turned out to be a very philosophical game. And Scion, if you have the head for it, and are okay with the front-loading mechanics that are, as I say, familiar with, omnipresent in White Wolf properties. Scion works really well at low levels. At higher levels, the game breaks. Oh, thank you very much, Annabelle Lee 90218, for gifting a sub to Cyanide Tree. Welcome to the channel. Scion breaks the higher up the level system you go. Mike's here. Hey, Mike. Hope you welcome. As I say, Scion breaks when you go higher up the level system, but we started off with a a hero level Scion called Dexter Blackwell. Dexter Blackwell was a Scion of Apollo with a speciality in medicine. I think you're seeing a general theme to the kind of characters, I play. Wow. Hurricane Red, thank you very much for the 5 gift subs. Welcome. Hey, Mikey. Welcome, Mikey. Welcome, How Should I Know About Life? Welcome, Shalan and Disco Jolras to the channel. And welcome, Sarehawk. Thank you very much, Hurricane Red. That is so amazing. I'm overwhelmed by the love in the channel today. Thank you very much for coming and supporting us. And thank you, Molietsu, for the 69 bits. Thank you. General celebrations for everyone. Yay! What time is it? Okay, it's 8:44. Okay, yeah, we're nearing the end of this. Actually, I'm actually feeling a little bit Proti. So apologies for Mike just coming in. And 69 bits from Jackson Healy. Thank you. Nice. I'm going to take one quick break here. Refresh my drink and get some more honey for my throat. So I will be back in a few moments. And we will kind of round out this stream with the last few up-to-date kind of characters, starting with Dexter. Back in a moment, folks. Oh, actually, I think I will try running... I'm going to try running an ad here, and hopefully this works. Please watch if you can. Every little bit helps. Let me see if I can... Oh, wow! 14 cookies gone. Thank you for the 4 gift subs. Welcome to the channel, Chipinella, Campbell M, C, Wilhelmina Murray, and AGODC. Wow, just as I was about to go on break. Okay, I am going to go grab a drink. Hopefully this will work if I try and run run an ad. And let me know if it does or doesn't when I get back. Okay, one moment. Transition. And I'm back. How whoa, what on earth has... What? We're up to a level 5 hype. What's been going on? Whoa. Okay, hang on. Right. What? Oh my lord. What have we got? Oh gosh. That seems to have... Wow. What on earth? Sorry, I'm trying to look at different things to figure out what's going on. Has there been wow, okay, so thank you very much for all. Wow, lots of bits. 14 cookies gone for 69 bits. Nice. The feed keeps jumping. So where are we gone? Oh gosh, overwhelming. So 14 cookies gone, 69 bits. Molieretsu 69 bits, nice. Jackson Healy 69 bits, nice. Exlibris Crow 69 bits, nice. 14 cookies gone gave out 4 tier 1 gift subs. Thank you very much. Fortunately, I can't tell quite who they have gone to, but welcome to the channel. Zalia Chimera gave 100 bits. Wow, 5 more gift subs from an anonymous gifter. Thank you very much to you. Tier 1 sub from Annabelle Lee 90218. Thank you very much for gifting a sub to Ali Jack. And another 5 tier community subs. Thank you. Oh god. And a new sub from Exlibris Crow. Thank you very much. 49 Siku's gone. 69 bits. Thank you. Nice. Malevolent Mango cheered with 100 bits. And thank you. Whoa. Hurricane Red. 10 gift subs. Whoa. That's... Whoa. This is 5 subs from Piper, 100 bits from Ryu here. Thank you, Moliatsu. Another 69 bits. Nice. Wonder Woman 24 bits. Thank you. Non-binary star system 100 bits. Thank you very much. Wow. Wow. That's. And Keyflowers, thank you for that Prime subscription. Thank you so much. It's really I'm lost for words. You're all amazing. We have such an amazing community here. So much love, and thank you for joining me on like a non-game stream. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for hanging out with us. And I hope, as I say, you're enjoying story time. Story time here. This is just so lovely. I'm all I'm all afluster. Gosh, is that more? I don't know where to look now. I think that's the. I think I'm just getting notification sounds of the notifier just catching up. So you all have just overwhelmed the subnotifier. It's just just astounding. Whoa. Okay. Right. Okay. Let's get back to the story time. So, when last we left off, yes, I was telling you about Dexter Blackwell. Dexter Blackwell, in a Scion game, Scion of Apollo. His backstory. His backstory is that he was prior to gaining his powers. He was. Yes, Jory, chaotic wholesome. That definitely seems to be the brand that RQ bring. Apollo, what a guy. Dexter Blackwell was a doctor. He trained as a medic, and he got disheartened by all the ill he saw by poor administration and the fact that he couldn't do as much good as he wanted to do. Oh no, a gentleman thief. No, not a stupid question at all. So there are, unfortunately, with Dull Channel, there are two different things. There are bits which are a Twitch-based currency that you can purchase from Twitch itself. And if you donate them to a channel, the channel gets 1 cent for every bit that you donate. So 100 bits means that the channel gets $1. So there is also an in-channel currency which Mike has named Rusty Bits, which is not confusing at all. Which we haven't quite figured out what we are going to do with. At the moment, you can spend 100 of your channel points, those Rusty Bits, to highlight a message on screen so that it automatically gets seen. We will try and figure out something to do with them. I'm not sure what you can do with them at the moment. Shade. No, it's not meant to shade. Mike is absolutely lovely, and I am very much looking forward to when all of this is over and that he can be sitting next to me again on screen, and bring his unique and delightful energy to you all. So yes, back to the story. Dexter Blackwell, yes. So he got disheartened, disillusioned with medicine, and so gave it all up to doss around for a while and effectively became a high class male escort, using his high appearance score. Highlighted yelling, "Yay, Rusty Quill!" Oh, thank you, and thank you, Hurricane Red. That is much appreciated. So yes, Dexter Blackwell, former doctor turned escort, At which point he you heard nothing, Mike. Nothing. At which point he oh at which point he got visited by the divine power of Apollo, and granted with a bunch of powers related to. I think he started off with a lot of sun and charisma based powers, so he could make he could effectively fire laser bolts from his eyes and charm basically charm the pants off anybody that he so desired. He was equipped with a if I remember correctly, he was equipped with a scalpel that boosted his medical ability, but also could change size to become effectively a dagger. I believe it was called the Scalpel of Asclepios. And he also had a gun, a pistol, which he could fire blinding bullets from. He sounds like an absolute lad. Yeah, ladies don't want a gentleman. Ladies want lasers. I probably have his character sheet around somewhere. It might be worth digging that out and taking a closer look at him. But yes, that was Dexter Blackwell in a Scion game. Another game that took place around that time was another friend of ours who'd been playing in Golden Opportunity. Decided to run a Warhammer fantasy role-playing game. And we're talking, this is Warhammer Fantasy 2nd edition. Wonder Woman, so laser eyes, a mad scalpel, and a gun with blinding bullets, and a doctor. I want to marry him. Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't we all, Wonder Woman? Actually, and cats and puppies. Weirdly enough, in the first Scion session, we had to face down. I think the very first combat we were in involved a giant demon cat, a literal Bakaneko. So yes, moving on. Yes, a friend of ours decided he wanted to play a Warhammer Fantasy role-playing 2nd edition game. Again, a system that I was not. Bakaneko, literally stupid or bad cat, but it is also a colloquial term for a kind of like demonic cat. It's the Japanese word for it. So yes, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd Edition. He wanted to try out this system, and it was not one that I was familiar with, and it's actually a really, really interesting, system if you ever get the chance to, play it, because it functions quite differently from other systems, particularly in the way that you can advance. Now, the interesting thing about this campaign was that we didn't create our characters. For this game, which was a 4-player game, Nick, the GM, created 4 characters based on a questionnaire that we had answered. Like, we gave him a few ideas, a few suggestions about the kinds of characters we wanted to play. And he created 4 characters, and we woke up on a battlefield with no knowledge about who we were, where we had come from, and we were basically playing the amnesiac party trope, and we had to figure out from contextual clues what who we were, what we were going to do, and as the game progressed, we could find out little bits and pieces about who we were. And the fun thing about this was that we started the game not knowing anything on our character sheets. So we had no stats or abilities listed on our character sheet until we used something, or we discovered that we had the capability to do something, at which point Nick would then consult his notes and give us the score, give us the value for a given stat. Anil, I'm loving this campaign. Can we do this? Are you talking about this this Warhammer idea? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, it really is a fantastic way. And what am I doing? And it worked. I think it worked. Yeah, I mean, let's see what we can do, Mike. Maybe this is something we could do. I could run as a community game or something like that. Plans. Oh, actually, it might make a really good stream game. Ooh. Ooh. Yes, sorry. Light bulbs. So I discovered that I was. So I gave myself the name Simon, and we ended up in a city, and we were just trying to find out bits and pieces about who we were. I actually discovered that I was that my class was scavenger, or that my occupation, because in Warhammer Fantasy Role Playing, you have occupations rather than classes specifically, and so I discovered that I was a scavenger, and actually, the fun thing was one of the notes that one of the notes that I had been given, or like character details I had been given, is that my character was missing the little finger on his left hand. So whenever we were in session, I would always have my hand like that, to denote the fact that I was missing that finger. That just a little bit of physical roleplay that I think that helped me get into character. And it was a really fun game. Oh, and what the other thing that the GM did with this game is that he blended it with elements of what did he blend it with? He blended it with some of the mechanics from Apocalypse World, and those who know Apocalypse World, it's obviously powered by the Apocalypse game, which is a very popular system that a lot of other games are built on, like Blades in the Dark, Monster Hearts. They're all built off the Apocalypse system. Yeah, Sharkle, part of the reason why I can do it is because I am slightly hypermobile. Well, I'm quite hypermobile. So So like bending my fingers in weird ways is is unfortunately par for the course. So Nick blended elements of Apocalypse World. Oh, thank you very much, Animal Lee 90218 for gifting a sub to Hillafrost Cat. Wow, Twitch, you OBS cutting the thing there. Welcome, and thank you once again for the gift sub. So he blended it with parts of Apocalypse World, most notably the move system. So what this allowed our characters to do was that we could roll against. Sometimes we could roll against specific stat, and then it enabled us to look at a move sheet, which is something commonplace in Powered by the Apocalypse games, and like ask questions or get insight on where to go from that. And Simon was a kind of like a bit of a rat kind of character. Like he was an urchin. We discovered unfortunately, like many of these games, they didn't last more than like 6 to 8 months. Partly because of scheduling, life gets in the way. Simon is a character I would have liked to play more of, and I really would have liked to see where he ended up. Like I was building the character to enter the cartographer profession with a view to being an explorer later on. But yeah, it's definitely a game or a style that I can recommend, and I would like to try more of. And now that Mike has made the suggestion, we might look to see if that's something we can do on the channel. It really is hard to keep games going. I mean, life really gets in the way. So, I mean, as I say, we're now into 2012, so I'm early 30s at this point. Many of my friends are mid to late 20s. People are starting to settle down, have families, move away, and things like that. And as I say, Josh ended up moving out of London, so that's why a number of games ended up coming to premature conclusions. And thank you very much, Hurricane Red, for gifting a sub to CIC Summers. Wow, you have been so super generous today. But do you have time to run a game? We will see. We will see. Fairy's Law. I mean, a game of some kind for us to run has always been on the list. We're just having to move up timelines. In these weird and strange times that we find ourselves in. Question from Shell Smiles. Oh, actually, Anil, a question. Approximately what fraction of campaigns have you finished? Ooh. Games that have actually ended. Games that have come to a conclusion, maybe about 25%. The problem is I was like in a lot of longer games for a while, and those are the ones that tend to peter out due to time commitments. I would say maybe about between campaigns that have actually ended and come to some kind of conclusion, if not the end of it, then I would say roughly 25%, maybe a bit less. Judging by what we have discussed today, that doesn't really sound like that. But there are a few other bits and pieces I'm including that I just do not remember the characters for, or that were very specifically meant to run over 4 to 8 sessions. The Scion game with Dexter Blackwell, that very definitely came to a conclusion. It wasn't a great conclusion, unfortunately, but that's partly due to the system issues. So yes, that was Simon. Another very short game that again petered out due to timing commitments was a GURPS game, and weirdly enough, for all that I read or talked about GURPS being the General Universal Role-Playing System, we decided that we would actually try out a game, and this was 2 players, 1 GM, and I played a guy called Nick Worthing, and I looked at this guy's character sheet earlier. He is it was Nicholas Edward Worthing Beresford, a upper middle like faded gentry kind of character who ended up as I think this is another character who ended up as an archivist. He ended up as an Egyptologist specialist, working in some private collection or library or another. He wasn't particularly enamoured of his family, so that's why he went by Nick Worthing rather than using his full family name. He just wanted to be a bit more ordinary. And archivist, you say? Yeah. Again, it's a type of character I have a great tendency of playing. People who are knowledge. Wonder Woman gifted 4 subs to the community. Hammer 4, Jay Montiliette, Cucumber Kale, and Emily Sciaba. Welcome, Sciaba. Welcome to the channel. Thank you, Wonder Woman, for that amazing generosity. Ooh, yes, so very wholesome and so very many gifts today. Thank you so much. So where was I? Gosh. Yeah, Nick Worthing. A game that only ran for about 3 or 4 sessions. It was supposed to be a kind of like mystery game. Again, came up with a decent background. Like a lot of these characters, I will come up with decent backgrounds for, and then the game actually peters out. So it's like, aww. But yes, he was disinterested in actually having much to do with his family, and was just more interested in studying and having a quiet job somewhere where he didn't really have to interact with people. Unfortunately, the game kind of pushed him out of that comfort zone, because he got involved with trying to identify an artifact that some kind of mobsters were involved with, and he was Nick Worthing was the kind of character cursed with the "I just want to be left alone," but has insatiable curiosity. Yes, thank you very much for that, Zalia. Yes, please do give and donate responsibly. Oh, wow, thank you very much, 14 Cookies Gone, for gifting subs to 11 Thirds, Bats and Baby Dolls, 3 Ops, Infinity Official, and Puzzle Solving Pianist. Welcome to the channel, all of you, and again, thank you so much. Yeah, your hand slipped. Oops. I believe you. 14 cookies gone. Thank you so much. So that kind of brings us to the end of like 2013, 2014. There are probably other little games, but again, I was running games in and around this time as well, so my playing time naturally ebbed and waned with the number of games that I was running at any given time. After so 20 like my playing time obviously diminished with 2013, 2014. Oh, and thank you very much for the 500 bits from an anonymous cheerer. Thank you so much. For that donation of bits. So as I say, my time ebbed and flowed with the amount of games I was running or playing in, and obviously it slightly diminished in 2013 because I got a partner in 2013, and that carried through. And then at the end of 2014, I made the decision to move to France with him, which basically took me out of things for 2015, and because I wasn't very comfortable with running with doing games online at that point. Thank you for the 100 bits, Miss Face, and 69 bits. Thank you, nice, from Crow again. Oh wow, you're again so generous. So yes, in 2015, I was living in Paris with my ex-boyfriend because he got a job out there. Take care, Annabelle Lee. Thank you very much for your generosity. Hope you have a great rest of day. So yes, 2015 saw me living in Paris. Didn't manage to do much gaming that way. And obviously in 2015, Molière Sue, 420 bits for saying this is the loveliest community. Thank you, and hope you have a blazingly good evening. I will say that my time in Paris was not the best. I do have a lot of thoughts about that city, which is probably a topic for a different conversation. But suffice to say, yes, I wasn't playing anything during that time. And in June of 2015, strangely enough, on my birthday in 2015, Rusty Quill put out the very first episode of Rusty Quill Gaming. And then at the beginning of and then all the conversation with you. Thank you very much, Roselaw. Well, hit me up on Discord if you see me around with that, and if I can talk, I will. And probably I will do other just chatting streams in future as well. Don't worry about that. So that was so that was 2015. I moved back to London at the beginning of at the very end of 2015. Partly because of my sister getting married at the beginning of 2016, and I mean, the relationship had turned rocky, so like me and my ex ended up splitting up mid 2016, and I started playing things again, or rather, I took a bit longer of a break because of where I was with my parents and such. I couldn't really very much again, and everyone else was busy, of course. So it was difficult to find games to jump into. And then, how long have we been running the... Thank you very much, Ryu, here for the 300 bits. Yes, an amazing energy in chat today. Oh, sorry. Well, take care, Crow, if you have to head out. Yes, we have been going for quite a while. Yes, doesn't hurt to send out random good wishes into the world. Not at all. Yeah, we probably won't go for too much longer because I should probably go and have dinner at some point. So last little bit. Oh shucks, Wonder Woman. Yes, I was meant to do my nails as well during the stream. I got completely caught up. I was supposed to talk to you and do my nails as well. Take care, Amhud. We probably won't actually be going for too much longer, but obviously the VOD will be here as and when you come back. Don't worry. Oh, it's 9:30, isn't it? Oops. Why is... Okay, why my timer is obviously off. Okay, well, I'll just run through this last little bit because we're not quite at the end of the story. I've been distracted by you all. Curses. Is it 8:30 or is it 9:30? Oh, daylight saving time. Daylight saving time has screwed me up because it's 4:30 here, so it must be 9:30. Let me have a look at my clock. Yep, it's 9:25. Okay, we won't run for too much longer. Okay, let me get through the rest of the story. So, 2018, we jumped to 2017 or 2018, and a friend who I have never played games with invites me to a D&D 5e game. That he is running, and as I have never played 5e at this point, having only read bits and pieces about it, it's like, okay, I should probably check out this system that is so very popular. Oh my lord, thank you so much for the 1,500 bits from an anonymous cheerer. Gosh. Oh boy. Oh wow. Thank you, whoever you are, for donating. Wow. So I decided I was going to create a character in this, and I decided to play a character class that I had never played up to this point. And I created Rufus Ferelin Urstar, a half-elven druid. And because of the nature of the homebrew world, that shout out to my GM Martin here, had come up with, it incorporates a bit of like bits of pantheons from all across different settings. So I asked him if in this game I could be a druid of Shornicle as a god of travellers, and he said yes. So coming back to that old cookie, and I am really enjoying, and that character is still going strong. We started at level 1, and I am now level 8. And Rufus is again a really interesting character for me to play. So he is not technically an orphan, but he grew up in an orphanage, in a woodland orphanage, because his parents met. His father is an elven merchant who he has no idea about. His mother is a human merchant, who, because of the nature of her job, traveling the roads back and forth, she was a traveling merchant. Felt that she was unable to look after him or give him the kind of childhood he deserved. So she entrusted him to the care of the House of Boughs, a forest community in the wilderness, to be raised by them, and that she would send letters, keepsakes, and whenever her travels brought her nearby, she would visit. And so he has grown up knowing the family that grew up around him and the orphanage, but also knowing the fact that he does actually have a mother and that he understands. He understands now the reasons why she had to do what she did. And once he was a teenager, he ventured out further into the forest, was very much a running, jumping, climbing trees kind of guy, and discovered a shrine to Shondacle in the upper reaches of this large tree, and from there he was inspired to devote himself as a protector of the land in that respect. So, for his background, he technically has the outcast background, outcast or wanderer background, which gives him like the direction sense abilities, as well as general survival specialities. He also so he's a druid of the Circle of Dreams, and this is a circle not in the player's book, but it's at the time it was in the playtest Unearthed Arcana material, but has now been incorporated. I think it's been incorporated into Xanathar's Guide for Everything, and he ventured into the big city, and got caught up in various adventures. So the idea is that where the orphanage is, it's basically kind of like in the middle of in the middle of woodlands, between a bunch of big cities and a set of kingdom, like small city-states and kingdoms out further east, and there have been tales of these kingdoms and such being overrun by like monstrous races who are like sacking and pillaging. And so in order to muster forces, one of the local villages came to the House of Boughs and like took him along to the big city to try and gain some help from the city to provide forces to help defend some of the smaller cities, city-states out on the plains. This request was turned down, but he ended up falling in with a group, with an adventuring group, and has been travelling with them for quite some time now. His aim, now that he is with them, is to be a kind of battlefield. He wants to be a kind of like scout, in inverted commas, battlefield tactician. Like, he's itching to get back and help defend his homeland. But he also understands that he is not experienced enough yet to really be able to do that. So he is still learning. He is still picking up. Still picking up knowledge to do that. He is a little bit. He is a little bit standoffish because his charisma is only 10, so he doesn't interact well with. He's very quiet and like secondary support character. He is the party's only healer at the moment, but he is also its defender, like a secondary tank to the guy who's playing the monk fighter. The main thing, though, is one of his tenets is he only he will help people who need help, but he will not help those who can help themselves. So this can get him into a little bit of trouble. Most notably, when the rest of his party went to, they were trying to get some information from a harbour master, and they felt that the best way to do this was to break into the harbour master's office at night to try and find out the information. Rufus didn't really agree with this, so he said he would stay as lookout. He would stay outside and kind of keep watch because he didn't really go along with what the rest of the group were doing. As it turned out, Rufus was right, and there were basically a gang of thugs in the harbour master's office waiting for anybody who were venturing in. So whilst outside, Rufus could tell that there was an altercation happening inside, but he knew the capabilities of his companions, and so he opted to remain outside while his companions were fighting. The only action he took was to stop somebody else from joining in, from approaching the office and joining in, and then I think he turned into a cat or something and acted as a distraction at a later point in the fight. It's not that I let them get caught. I mean, obviously, I didn't know that there were people waiting inside. I just thought it was a bad idea to do this. But they overruled. They overruled things and went ahead with it. So obviously, Rufus does still have a mind of his own and is capable of making his own decisions on that. So yeah, that's one point where the background that I had written for him very much came into play and very much came into conflict with the rest of the podcast. But obviously, these are things not in a I'm totally against you, I am going to fight you kind of PvP manner. But it made for very good roleplay, and made for a very good encounter. And I'm very pleased with the way that the game is going. And then, obviously, last year, having met with the server having gone the way it will, having met Drotter Cup, and thereby meeting Fish Nor Fish and Night Bites. And such, I got involved with watching and then taking part in games run by Him Plays International, and so the first game I played as part of that was a game run by Drut, a game of an Artalthorian Games is Castle Falkenstein. Where I played a fairy lord called Lyricane, who let's say he typifies what you would expect from a fae who is very louche and likes playing with people. He's got a bunch of motivations around broken dreams and well, not broken dreams, actually, like encouraging dreams and like playing on the aspirations of like second and third sons who have no hope of inheriting the family money, etc. But in particular, he plays... So for those unfamiliar with Castle Falkenstein, it's kind of like an alternative steampunk Victoriana setting. It is the real world, but if things were slightly different and if the fairy court had influenced world history. So, for example, Prussia is still a major force and is under the under the sway of the Unseelie court. Laura, I think it's a great setting, and the videos for it are up on the Hint Plays YouTube channel if you want to go back and watch that. So I was playing I was playing a fairy lord who is part of the diplomatic service of the Kingdom of Bavaria. So I'm playing a Bayerische, part of the Bayerische diplomatic corps, and in this instance, for the scenario that we were playing, I was seconded to the London office, and have a lot of fun playing around with the other characters, and utilizing diplomatic immunity to its absolute finest way. Nibbling 3, really interesting. Yes, I have seen all the things about a potential cooking stream, and yes, cooking with Chrono is one of the things that we have on our list as a potential Sandbox Sunday. And yes, particularly with Helen having done that, if at some point we could get the two of us into the same kitchen, I think that would probably be really interesting. So yes, that was Lyricane. Ashok is a game I'm playing in, is a character I'm playing in Nightbites' Wars campaign, and Onja is a throwback to a second edition game. As I say, I'm playing a Glyph Scribe of Denier. Most of those you can see on the Hint Place channel already. Some of the videos have already gone up. I think all of the Castle Falkenstein game is on their channel as well. If not, hit me up in the Discord and I will send you links to things later. But yes, I have been going for longer than I thought this stream would go for. So yes, I think it's probably about time that I called the stream there. Thank you ever so much for hanging out with me. I hope you've enjoyed this this story time with Anil. If you enjoyed it, hopefully we'll be able to do more of these. There's definitely a lot of other topics that I would that I could talk about, like actual talk about the campaigns that I have run. Talk about various games design things, and just maybe do some character background work if people have questions about characters they have or looking for ideas. Thank you so much. 14 Cookies gone for another 420 bits. May your evening blaze so brightly. I'm running out of puns. And thank you very much, Niblick3, for the 24 bits. Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, eat and bed water. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much, everybody, for your generosity. I hope that these streams can provide a little bit of chillness and such in these difficult times. Okay, I am going to play us out. And take care, everyone. Hope you have a lovely rest of day. Cheers, everyone. I really enjoyed that. Bye.